Hello, Kansas and Western fans. Today we're going to do another viewer question video, which I haven't done for a couple of months at least, because there's been a couple really good ones in the last week or two that I thought would be useful to address. One, because I think it might be helpful for others just to understand how this particular issue affects me personally on my layout and how it might or might not affect you on your own layout. And then the second one is just kind of a how and why I use a certain material. And as you can imagine, it's going to be this joint compound here in front of me. So we're going to take these one at a time. First, we're going to start with track cleaning. And this question comes most recently from Derek Alexander 4030. He wants to know how I clean my track and if I clean my track before every time I do an operations session. And first of all, how I clean it starts off with these materials you see here. And first of all, you have your typical track cleaning eraser. I typically only use that if I've done some work around the track. For most of the track on the layout that's been put in place now for about a year, the only time I've used this is when I've been done, when I've gotten done soldering joints. Let me see if I can find one here that's not painted. Here we go. Well, here's a joint here where a wire is connected to the mainline bus to the track, and then a track joint right there. So it's not a whole lot of solder, but to use solder effectively, at least for me, I do spread, now I can't think of the word. For the first time, I actually paused recording and just went and found the word. It's solder flux. And flux is kind of a paste that you spread on all the points that you want to solder. It helps the solder flow much more easily, and it cleans the joint. But what that leaves behind is a sticky residue, which obviously can interrupt any kind of electrical conductivity. And if you leave that residue on the rails and then run a locomotive across that, you got instant dirty locomotive wheels, and it will just shut down right there. So rather than let that happen, I do like to clean that off. And the flux, when it is heat treated by the gun or whatever, the soldering iron, it will kind of turn into a gel. So most of the times the flux will burn completely off, but there's any excess, usually on the farther ends of the rail there away from the joint, it'll kind of turn into a gel, and it's kind of difficult to clean off. So sometimes I'll just use that brick, track cleaning eraser to clean that. Otherwise, as you can see with all this track here that got spray painted for just a base coat, it's almost impossible to do much of anything else without using the track cleaning eraser, and so I use it for that purpose. Now, for other methods, I have this old tester's bottle that I use, and then I fill that with 91% isopropyl alcohol. And I got this idea from other model railroaders who have done exhaustive research on what types of liquids out there that can actually conduct electricity but also clean your track. And this is the one that made the top of the list. It's also shortened down to IPA, and that's not the type of beer. But otherwise, isopropyl alcohol works pretty well. It's basically like a paint thinner, and I use it for that purpose as well. But I just have a little bit here in a bottle, and then I use just a regular old Q-tip to dip into the bottle, and then I will just kind of wipe it on the rail. And I'll try to do that with that flux, which gets most of it, but otherwise I have to use the brick to get the rest. But if I want to just do a little touch up, I'll just wipe it on there, and then, in fact, I'll just do a demonstration. Hang on just a second. All right, so for the demonstration, I've got a cotton swab here. Just going to get that soaked a little bit, and I'm just going to wipe it on the rail, and we're going to see how dirty these rails are now. And I'll just kind of rotate the head of the swab a little bit to make sure we get the most use out of it. And we're finding out that this track is not terribly dirty. Let's try to find some more track. Just want to show you what it looks like okay, here we go. So that's what it looks like when you're picking up dirt. And in my experience, that's really not that bad. I have run some trains on this track recently. They ran just fine. So anyway, that's just an example of how I use that. If I want to use something that maybe will cover a little bit more, I will use one of these gun cleaning patches. And these are handy because they're fairly small, so you don't really need a whole lot of material. But they're a nice fine fabric, so that you don't really have a lot of lint or anything like that. And I'll just dip that here. Get that semi-soaked. And then I'll just wipe that on the rail like this, so you can get a lot faster. And you can see that's what that looks like when it's picking up dirt. So that's kind of my main methods that I use. Now, to speak to his question about if I clean the track before every operation session, and I can say that I don't. And the only reason for that is because my experience has told me that I don't need to. Especially all the track that you see that's just track sitting on foam. It really hasn't been impacted by any kind of dirt. I don't have any kind of humidity control in this room, but it is air conditioned. So I think that kind of keeps the humidity low, because I know humidity helps to attract dirt, especially if it's just sitting on a surface. So that's not really an issue. But this also isn't the cleanest room in the world. You know, I've got some dust on the floor. I work with dust in different areas of the layout, especially over here in the Holcomb Power Plant area, where I've been working with tile grout, which is very dusty. It's very fine grain. And it's not hard for that to travel. But as I mentioned before, any track that I actually work around, especially with scenic materials, I do go back and clean that, because that's unavoidable to get dirty. And then even track here that's been spray painted just for a base coat of color, it gets oversprayed. I definitely have to clean that off. So, but otherwise, for all the track that's been untouched for over a year, it hasn't really needed to be cleaned. So that's just kind of some good information for anybody looking to get into the hobby who maybe doesn't want to worry about cleaning track all the time. I know it was a concern of mine for a while, but it just hasn't been the case. Now, if you want to guarantee perfect running all the time, then by all means, clean the track as much as you like. But I'm just telling you from my experience, that just hasn't been necessary. If you have a different experience, please share that in the comments below, so we can help especially new people that are getting into this or thinking about getting into it, have them learn from our experience in case it's something different than what I'm talking about. All right, now let's move on to the next issue, and that is joint compound. Now, several of you have asked me, why do I use this material? And I don't think it's terribly common that people do. There's obviously a lot of scenic products out there, like plaster of Paris or Hydrocal or all kinds of things, but I think they're all basically the same type of product. They're just maybe made a little bit differently, and I can't really speak to that. I don't want to tell you a bunch of information that I don't know to be true, but I have worked with several different types of things, and they seem very similar. But anyway, the most recent person that's asked me about this is Larry Rogers 5996, and he wanted to know what I do to keep the drywall mud from cracking. And I'm going to show you that I don't do anything, because I really don't know what I can do. And you can see here in the Portland cement plant scene, this is some recently poured concrete / drywall mud that is cracking horribly, and it looks terrible, right? And that's because it's almost 1/4 inch thick. And so the thicker that you apply your drywall mud, the more likely it is to crack. But this isn't going to be the end of my work on this scene. I do plan to do a finish coat. And for anybody that's done their own sheetrock work in their house and taped and mudded, and if you've done it, you know what I'm talking about, there's no way you're going to get away with doing a single coat. Not even the professionals do a single coat. They always come back and do a skim coat to clear up any cracks, just to make the surface look much smoother. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So to directly answer his question, I don't worry about the cracking because I come back and do another coat. And then on top of that, real concrete in real life does crack. So if I come back and do the finish coat here and still end up having a few cracks, as long as it's not this bad, because this is horrible, I'm not going to worry about it, because it just looks realistic at that point and just adds more detail. For instance, this is a finished area of the concrete where I did do that skim coat and where I've gone back and added some paint, and you can see there aren't really any cracks, at least none that I can readily identify. So it is possible to use drywall mud and not end up with cracks. You just have to maybe work on it a little bit extra. But we are talking about a finished detail of a scene really here. This isn't just a hillside that we're going to cover with grass and trees. You're going to want it to look a lot better. So it does take a little extra work to get that effect. Now, the reason why I use drywall compound is super simple. And that is two things. One, I'm familiar with the product. I've used it. I've sheetrocked and mudded several times throughout my life. So I understand, the consistency that it is, how to work with it, how long the dry time is, depending on thickness and all that stuff. So I'm very familiar with it, very comfortable with it. But the nice thing is it comes in these nice little pails. You can buy a small pail. This is about, what is this, 3 pounds it says here. I don't know if this is like I think this might be a quart. You can get bigger ones, but I wouldn't, because it's not likely to last that long unless you're going to build a whole mountain or something like that. This quart here will probably last me 6 months without going bad. The nice thing also is too, that if it does start to dry out, I can just add a little bit more water, stir it up really well, and it fixes it right up. But I really just like the ready to use aspect of it. I can go to the store, buy a pail of these, or a pail of this, flip the lid off, maybe stir it a little bit, and start using it. And then once I'm done with it, I put the lid on, snap it down really tight, and then maybe I don't do scenery work for another couple of weeks or couple of months. But then when I do again, I pull the lid off and start working. I don't have to mix anything up. I don't have to worry about the right ratio or proportion of water to material or any of that stuff. I just pull the lid off and go to work. Now, I'm not trying to say, to recommend to others that they should do this. I'm just trying to say this is how I do it and why. You guys can make your own judgment on whether or not that's a good idea or not. And then in terms of, this is drywall tape. This is a sticky kind where you can see the grid in there, and then it pretty much sticks to anything. So I use that instead of other materials as just a base to apply that to. So if I wanted to stretch this tape across maybe this corner here and make kind of an angled slope, I could just attach the tape to the wall, attach it to the floor, and then just spread the joint compound on that, allow it to dry, maybe do another coat, and then that's all there is to it. So I've got a lot of experience doing that in this area here, where I did some of that to smooth out some areas on this foam for this hillside, and it worked just fine. So, and the nice thing about using it as a scenic base is if you're going to cover it with grass, dirt, whatever, the cracks don't matter at that point, because you're just going to fill those in or cover those. So I hope that answers the questions for those of you, especially because I've been asked several times about using joint compound. Again, not trying to recommend its use, but that's why I use it and how it's worked for me. So I hope that explains that. And then I hope I answered your question on cleaning track. If anybody has any follow-up questions on either one of these things, please let me know. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see if I can answer those. Or if you have any other questions, we'll see if we can save those for later for another viewer question video. That's about all for now. Hope you guys have a great week. Appreciate you watching. We'll talk to you later.